All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. Adam Carricker, the Carricker Chronicles, on with us. Adam, I appreciate you for joining us, man. How you doing?
As always, thanks for having me. I'm doing good.
Good, good. Well, we appreciate you and all that you do and breaking down things. Appreciate you giving us a spot on the website as well. We'll tell people about that in a moment. But halfway through the season, 5-1, when you zoom out from 30,000 feet and look at it, Nebraska fans have to be somewhat happy. I mean, I know that the one game on the Friday night didn't go the way they wanted, but looking back over the last few years, 5-1 has to feel pretty good.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mixed bag, and I'm not smirking to be rude or anything. I'm smirking because it's a mixed bag. Like if you just look at the first 6 games, we're 5-1. Like that's the best record Nebraska's had in almost a decade since 2016. So when you just look at that in the vacuum, Husker fans, I believe, are happy. But it doesn't feel like we're 5-1. Like that's not the vibe in Husker Nation. I couldn't quite put my thumb on it as to why. Had the bye week to kind of think about it, chatted with a few folks, and I think there's really two main reasons as to why we're 5-1. Husker fans are happy being 5-1, but it doesn't quite feel like we're 5-1. The two reasons are this: number one, our toughest games are still ahead of us. With all due respect to a ranked Illinois team, and you look at Colorado, who seems to be better than people thought. I know they just lost to Kansas State, and who knows what's going to happen with Travis Hunter's injuries and all that. But I think you look ahead, and we still probably got our toughest games ahead of us, starting with Indiana, then Ohio State. All of a sudden, Iowa scores 40 points out of nowhere on Washington. And Wisconsin, I know they're banged up in the backfield, but the quarterback's out for the year, running back, but all of a sudden they're like killing teams. And so you look and it's like, man, our 4 or 5 toughest games may still be ahead of us. So I think that's number one. Number two, let's be honest, Husker fans have been trained. Things aren't going to go our way. And when things go your way long enough, you expect good things to happen. When things don't go your way long enough, you have to be untrained to think that way. So it's kind of a wait and see approach, starting with the Indiana game this weekend.
I think most college football fans are masochists in general, right? Like they just they just can't be happy.
Yeah.
If you see the football over my shoulder. Florida State fans would trade, right? Like we'd trade 1-5 but the thing is we'd be 5-1, would be miserable, right? Like why?
Yeah.
How did we drop that one game? That's just, I don't know. College football fans we're fanatics, right? Like, and so even at 5-1, they could have even beaten Illinois. They 6-0, they'd be like, I don't know, so. It all kind of starts at the top. I do want to ask you about the Indiana game, which, I don't know that we expected that we'd have 11 combined wins by the time that we got to the Indiana game. But, 6 games in to a college career, would you say Raiola has exceeded, met, failed expectations? What are your thoughts, big picture on him?
Well, first of all, I wasn't going to bring up Florida State because I know you're a Florida State fan.
I can live in it, man.
Yeah. Second of all, when it comes to Dylan Raiola, the sky isn't even the limit. Like the stars are the freaking limit with that guy. A potential first round pick one day, potential All-American, all these things. But right now, he's a true freshman teenager starting a quarterback. And coming into the season, I just wanted him to complete at least 2/3 of his passes. By the way, he's completing 67%. I wanted him to have a 2-1 touchdown to interception ratio. It's 3-1, 9 passing touchdowns to 3 interceptions. So he has matched and then some all I wanted from a true freshman teenage starting quarterback. He has played very well so far this year. The Rutgers game, his last game, was probably his only, if you want to use the word subpar, for performance of the year. But you go back to the Illinois game, and he was about the only guy in the field that gave us a real chance to win that night. So to me, he's played very well so far this year.
It's looking at quality of opponent matters. Not to point too much at Indiana, but you look at you look at Nebraska's defense, and outside of that Illinois game where they scored 31, they've given up 7, 10, 3, 10, and 7. Almost a perfect, if you just exclude the Friday night, almost a perfect, front and backwards. And then Indiana scored a lot of points. Now, again, I don't know who they've played that's like been a stout defense, but 31-77, 42-52, 42-41. I don't know what they were doing against FIU, only scoring 31, but an offense that has put up some points this year. And obviously that's the matchup, right? Like I would think Indiana wants to go, fast pace here. I would think Nebraska would be cool slowing it down and winning a grinded out game on the road. And obviously the whoever gets to play the game in their style is probably going to come out on top. again, I'm not trying to give Indiana, which, if they're watching this, they, whatever, but I'm not trying to give bulletin board material, but like, are you buying that their offense is as good as it's advertised, or is the opponent there matter a lot?
Well, it's yes and no. Like you said, they're averaging over 500 yards offense a game, 315 pass yards, number one pass offense in the Big Ten, number one red zone offense in the Big Ten. Yet they're still averaging just over 200 rushing yards a game. 200.4 is technically just over 200 rushing yards a game, so they're balanced. You look at who they played, just like us, it's not Murderers Row. Okay, so I think for both teams, this is a prove it game. We're 5-1. I think Husker fans are happy with the first half of the season, but like I said, we're just kind of waiting to see what happens. And so it's a prove it game for us. We haven't beat a ranked team since 2016. We got to go on the road. The last time we played at 11 a.m., it was kind of ugly versus Purdue, and then we pull away late. You look at Indiana, they haven't played anybody, but they look really freaking good. Okay, so for them, it's a prove it game. Somebody's going to walk out of this game feeling really good about themselves, and somebody's going to walk out of this game still with a whole lot yet to prove the rest of the season. So I'm looking at Indiana. They look really good. Their quarterback, former MAC player of the year at Ohio, just a couple of years ago, had 33 starts before he ever stepped foot on the field in Bloomington. Okay, Curtis Rourke, he looks like the best quarterback in the Big Ten so far. They're going to play a couple of teams that are a little bit better, much like us, than they have up to this point, starting with the black shirt defense on Saturday from Curtis Rourke's point of view. So he's going to have a chance to prove what he can do, just like Nebraska's got to prove what they can do. So to me, Indiana looks really good. They look much improved. They got to do it against better competition.
Yeah. What worries you the most in this game?
So Indiana's not allowed a touchdown defensively in the first quarter all year. And then you go to the fourth quarter, they've scored 80 points. So they play 4 full quarters of football. If you've watched Nebraska, we played 24 quarters of football in an overtime this year. Our defense has played 22 really good quarters of football. Our offense, 13, just over 50%. So for me, it's the consistency of playing 4 full quarters. It's our coaches making in-game adjustments. We have to be able to play 4 full quarters. If you look at the second half this year alone, Nebraska's only scored, 58 points in the third and fourth quarters combined this year compared to Indiana's 80 in the fourth quarter. All right, and if you take away the Purdue game, we're 5-1, yet we've been outscored by 8 points in the second half combined this year. If you take away the Purdue game, 38-30 by our opponents. So we have to play 4 full quarters.
It does feel like, you mentioned this, it does feel like that litmus test game where if Nebraska, and really for both teams, but if Nebraska could win and get to 6-1, obviously next week going to be extremely tough against a top 5 team. But then you start to look at the rest of the schedule, right? And obviously the team's not doing this, but I don't have to go out and play, so whatever. But you start to look at what the rest of the schedule looks like. UCLA, very winnable game. USC doesn't look invincible by any means, very winnable game. Wisconsin, go out, very winnable game. Iowa, although that 40-pointer, certainly, it wasn't the most shocking thing in college football this year because there's been a billion shocking things, but winnable games through the rest of the stretch. But it feels like if you win this one, it sets the trajectory upward to where it could be a really special year. If you lose it, you're starting to piece together, well, can we beat this team? Can we beat that team? And so I agree. And the same thing for Indiana. Their second half of the schedule is much tougher than the first half was as well. And so it's kind of the same thing for both, which should make for a really good game on Saturday. Do you have a prediction yet? Do you have a lean in this one?
Well, both teams are also coming off a bye. So they should both be rested, healthy, well prepared, ready to go. It's going to be a big game on Saturday. I will say this. I had an expert predictor on my show a week ago during the bye. He actually has Nebraska losing to Indiana and Ohio State, yet still finishing 8-4, beating Wisconsin and Iowa at the end of the year. So those last 3 games, like you said, USC, Wisconsin, Iowa, could go either way, all 3 of them. A prediction, so to speak. This is the toughest one to predict so far this year because I don't know how Indiana's going to look versus a better defense. I don't know how Nebraska is going to be. Have we made some adjustments? Are we going to be more consistent? I don't know. My gut is this. Okay, Kurt Cignetti has done a phenomenal job. Just Google him. He wins. He'll tell you about it, okay? If you heard that. Favorite quote of the year so far, by the way. He's done a phenomenal job. They're not going to be more talented than Nebraska. Nebraska is actually a little bit bigger, not that we've been overly physical yet this year. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around the fact that Kurt Cignetti could have leapfrogged In just a matter of a few months, Matt Rule in Nebraska at Indiana, he could have leapfrogged them a matter of a few months when Matt Rule's in the middle of year 2. I just have a hard time wrapping my head around that. I'm not uber confident. You can call me Homer if you'd like. That's fine. I'll live with that. I'm going to go with Nebraska 28-24, and the offense and special teams does just enough, and the defense carries the day for Nebraska.
Yeah, I certainly like Nebraska to cover. I don't know where I'm at as far as a winner in this, but I do like Nebraska in the underdog role. Kind of like, I mean, obviously other side of the country and another conference. I kind of like Kirby Smart in the underdog role, right? He doesn't get to do that very often, and I think Texas is a better team, but I kind of like Kirby Smart in an underdog role. So maybe a little bit of the same vibes here. So Adam, where can people follow you? Where can they find more of your work and get more of your content?
Hey, it's easy to say this in hindsight, but if you've watched my show before the game, I said that I think Ohio State's the better team, but Oregon will win. I said I think that Ole Miss is the better team, but LSU will win.
Yeah.
And I luckily went 2 for 2 last weekend, so I don't know if I can continue that streak. But as far as where to watch me, you can catch my show, The Character Chronicles. Go to YouTube, type in Character Chronicles, or you can go to characterchronicles.com, and your show is on there as well.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity there and thinking about us and making us part of that. And we appreciate you a ton for hanging out, man. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks for having me.